Hangar 13's open-world action title, Mafia III, came out in October 2016, and it didn't review very well, getting around 68 on Metacritic, and that is when things started to go downhill.
In a lengthy piece on Kotaku this week, the details of what exactly has been going on behind the scenes after the release of Mafia III have been revealed for the first time. The third game in the long-running Mafia series, published by 2K Games, arrived in October 2016 to what Metacritic calls mixed or average reviews. It's got a score of 68 on the PS4. That was not enough to get Hangar 13 employees a bonus, according to Jason Schreier's Kotaku report. 2K president Christoph Hartmann had told employees before the game's release that their bonuses would be tied to a threshold on Metacritic of either 85 or 80. Schreier says the people he spoke to remembered it differently. That's when, according to Kotaku, morale at Hangar 13 took a hit. We just have a quick note on that. Tying somebody's bonus based on what the Metacritic score is, for me, that's very, very problematic. There was that, remember that Obsidian had the same thing with Fallout New Vegas. They didn't quite hit their 85.
It's the most famous one, isn't it?
Because they were like one mark off. I don't see that as fair, because a lot of what the Metacritic, how the game's received is based on creative decisions, right?
Yeah.
Like how the game's going to function, how it's going to be, not on how good that texture is or how well that character moves or whatever. That's what the people who work in grassroots day to day, that's what they're working on, right? They're not working on like the grand outlook, the creative vision for the game, and that is tied to the management. That's the management is control of that.
Also, you got to consider the fragility of like the reviewers and the people that they actually allow onto Metacritic to affect the Metacritic score. I don't want to call anyone out or anything, but for example, you might play a game, encounter a problem, and score it 1 out of 10. That is going to tank the Metacritic score. You might later change your mind and bring it back to a 7. It's that kind of volatility that you can't really account for. There are going to be outliers and stuff like that bring a score down occasionally. Okay, the consensus for Mafia wasn't that it was an 80 or 85 game, but still, it's Metacritic, man. You can't tie what you pay people to that. 18 months down the line, and Hangar 13 is not in a great place. Schreier describes a, quote, turbulent time for the studio, floundering to figure out what his next game would be. A lot of the people behind Mafia 3 have moved on, including top positions like the art director, some senior producers, design leads, and the design director. Some left of their own accord, and some were asked to go.
Kotaku spoke to a dozen people familiar with the Hangar 13 situation. The studio has gone through 2 rounds of layoffs in the last 12 months, with staff being shifted around to different countries on different salaries, of course lower than what they'd been on before. 2K actually responded to Kotaku, saying that the restructuring at Hangar 13 earlier this year was a result of 2K's need to scale resources appropriately based on the project timelines and 2K's long-term business objectives, and were in no way a reflection of the team's progress or creative process. These are always difficult decisions, and we made every effort to assist those affected. When Hangar 13 had started working on Mafia 3, taking over from the series' development roots in the Czech Republic, 2K had wanted it to be on par with Grand Theft Auto series. They wanted features like districts, empire building, and a massive open world.
Now this is a big thing as well, because obviously Rockstar, Grand Theft Auto, they're under the same umbrella, the same company, they're both under Take-Two Interactive. So 2K, there's kind of a rivalry there, and it's kind of Rockstar and Grand Theft Auto have kind of overshadowed Mafia for all these years. So then the 2K leadership are like, well, we want to do that. We want to be as good as Rockstar. We want our own version of Grand Theft Auto, and that was kind of pushing a lot of the development for Mafia 3, and that's why there are things like the districts and stuff, which the developers who spoke to Kotaku and Jason Schreier kind of admitted that's why it was kind of grindy, because they had all these ambitions to do all these different things, and it just didn't really pan out in reality. Development at Hangar 13 faced lots of problems, not least of which the language barrier between the Czech and English-speaking members of the dev team, in terms of social communication and the actual game's code. And as always in these types of stories, one of the major problems apparently came down to management, with leadership finalising ideas far too late into the project. And again, the word crunch pops up in this report, with developers hammering long and hard hours near the end of the project, working nights and mandatory Saturdays. Here's one quote from the article. One group of designers, engineers and artists crunched for nearly a year to add details to Mafia 3's world. In all, the game took around 6 years to develop, 3 years at 2K Czech and about the same at Hangar 13, where it was basically completely rebooted.
After the game's release, Hangar 13 were conceiving plans to make a Mafia 4 set in Vegas during the 70s. It would have been a video game take on Martin Scorsese's classic Casino, set in mob-controlled Sin City. City. But those plans didn't last long, and the studio refocused on a new IP called Rhapsody, a game set in 80s Berlin where players took the role of a Russian Jew whose parents had been murdered in a Soviet labor camp. It was compared to the spy movie Kingsman, but without the, quote, really goofy shit. But the game was caught up in the studio's turbulence, the subterfuge element was dropped completely, and it became an action game centered around music. The setting changed, as did almost everything else about it. Morale sunk according to Schreier, and the people working on it were looking on with envy at their neighbours in another team working on a project called Parkside. Hangar 13 laid off an apparently significant number of staff in February this year. It's now unclear what they're currently working on.
So these stories do emerge often when it's a game that is kind of not reviewed very well, and it seems, you know, there's kind of problems behind the scenes and stuff, and that's when these stories really come out. I don't know if that's because the journalists like Jason Schreier actually target games that appear to have been struggling or something, or if they hear, you know, how they get about into launching these investigations. I don't know how they decide. But
it may be because it's easy to get information out of disgruntled employees, right? Because obviously they're leaving people in the wake here who used to work in the thing. So Jason Schreier thinks that's easy pickings for info.
It's probably the case. There's a lot of staff that you're right that have left and stuff, and they're doing their own thing. The case here is really interesting. I think the months since the game came out, so it came out in late 2016, and in the time since then they've been through like how many ideas for projects. The team has been split up into two. There's all this kind of turbulence going on, and they can't kind of focus on a project. We don't know what they're working on now. Schreier does end the article saying that they could well come out with something good in the future, and of course I hope they do. I hope they do come out with something decent and they get through this kind of troubled period, because you make a game, you put all that time, you pour 3 years, 3.5 years maybe into a game, and it's not, you know, it gets 68 on Metacritic and that's it. It's just the death of it, and that's a real shame. Despite the fact that it sells well, despite all the other things around it, despite the fact that reviewers like the fact that, you know, the way that it focused the narrative and stuff. But none of that matters because the Metacritic score was 68. That's it. Death sentence.
Now the future is obviously in doubt for Hangar 13, a development team that was put together just to work on the Mafia 3 game, because they weren't in existence before they got together to work on that. So, you know, going forward, they don't know what to work on. Mafia 4 was scrapped, Rhapsody was scrapped, nobody knows what they're working on now. They scaled down from 150 employees apparently in 2016 when the game was when they were crunching, when the game released. God knows what they're working on, how many employees they've got left, and exactly what the future is now for Hangar 13. Let's hope that they come up with something and, you know, they do something successful or find some success out of all the effort and all the troubles that they've gone through. So good luck to you.
There you go. That's what's been going on behind the scenes at Hangar 13. Which of their scrapped ideas do you think sounded best? I think Mafia 4 sounded alright actually. Let us know down in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. There's another video right there which you can watch right now, and there's a link to Patreon if you want to support the channel. See you next time.